I'm on the record as having been very sceptical of the original 2015 deal, believing it to be too limited in scope to prevent Iran's malign activities and far too weak in enforcement to prevent a nuclear Iran, should Iran choose that path. Iran stands on the verge of possessing a nuclear bomb. In fact, intelligence suggests that they have sufficient enriched uranium today for at least 2 nuclear weapons. They have progressed far beyond the parameters of the JCPOA. So restoring Iran to the old deal simply doesn't have any of the benefits we once thought it would. The JCPOA's time has been and gone. The Rubicon has been crossed. The Iranian regime brutally represses, it persecutes, it tortures its own people, it wastes the Iranian people's resources on terrorism, on foreign aggression, on missiles, and on nuclear weapon capabilities. I hope to see the day when we and our partners have no need for sanctions on Iran or the proscription of its affiliates. The day when the UK and Iran can enjoy normalised relations, and when the people of Iran have a government that respects human dignity and exists in peace with its neighbours. But that day will not come if we provide sanctions relief to fuel the regime's corruption, incompetence and terrorism, nor will it come through weak and naive responses to the pursuit of, indeed now the establishment of, nuclear weapons capabilities. I humbly urge the government to change course, to learn from the first JCPOA's failures, to listen to the concerns of many across this House and from our partners in the region, and work with us and them to impose maximum pressure on Iran.
So the UK and other Western participants to the JCPOA must abandon the flawed approach to the nuclear deal and refer, as other colleagues have mentioned, the regime's nuclear dossier to the UN Security Council and reinstate previous UN Security Council resolutions that were suspended by the JCPOA. Iran is the world's premier supporter of terror. The IRGC was rightfully prescribed by the United States in 2019. And I, like others, have been worried that the United States is considering delisting it at Iran's request. Far from delisting it, the United Kingdom should be prescribing the IRGC, and so should the rest of the West. Yet, despite one of our closest allies prescribing the Revolutionary Guard Corps, we continue to drag our heels, whilst Iran's spiderweb of terror stretches across the Middle East and beyond and begins to grasp at Europe at our doorsteps. Now, we must show, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Iranian people that we are willing to hold the IRGC accountable for their nefarious activities in the ways that the moderates of Iran cannot for fear of death and destruction. So I simply ask the Minister on the front bench, when she replies to this debate, how many more terrorists must they fund? How many more innocents must die? And how many more must they kidnap before we finally prescribe the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terror organisation?
Iran's nuclear programme has been knowledge since 2002, when the existence of the facilities at Natanz and Arak were revealed by the Iranian Democratic Opposition, the NCRI. The Iranian regime has always asserted that its programme is for civilian purposes only, and has always denied that it is attempting to produce nuclear weapons. The report of the IAEA makes clear that the Iranian regime has effectively been playing games with the agency for many years. At 3 locations that the agency requested to visit, the regime razed buildings to the ground and removed structural material and soil, clearly in an effort to disguise what was happening there, and a new course is called for. Consideration should be given to whether seeking to adhere to the JCPOA as the basis for our future dealings with Iran is either realistic or sensible. Rather than clinging to vain hopes that Iran is capable of mending its ways, of responding to the censure by the IAEA, I believe that the UK should work with the United States and other international partners to refer Iran to the UN Security Council with a view to reinstating the 6 sanctions-imposing resolutions that were suspended with the initial implementation of the JCPOA.
Iran, as we've heard, is also responsible for waging war, terrorism and violence, mostly through its proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq and the Palestinian territories. While some of these proxies have rightly been banned by the UK, although not all their front organisations have, the government, I think, should do more, and I think the government should look at prescribing Hezbollah and Hamas. Iranian disinformation efforts run by the IRGC have expanded significantly since 2015, with mounting evidence of interference in UK domestic politics, including last year's Scottish Parliament elections. The UK government should urgently draw up proposals for how it intends to combat and disrupt this interference. Should it prove impossible to secure a satisfactory deal, which I think is pretty inevitable, should it prove impossible, then I concur with the honourable gentleman for Clwyd West. The UK and other Western participants should refer the regime's nuclear activities to the UN Security Council, and we should immediately seek to reinstate the 6 resolutions that were suspended in good faith because of the JCPOA.
Those that believe Iran will settle for a deal in order to trade with the West must read the ideological basis of the regime and its president. They seek nothing less than the complete Islamisation of society and the elimination of Western influence. Tehran has no desire to be our partner, even less our friend. And let's be quite clear, to separate the good and great people of Iran from the regime. The two are plain different things, as recent shows of unrest have demonstrated. We should encourage the one and not the other. The Iran of 2022 is very different to the Iran of 2015. Hardliners in the IRGC have tightened their stranglehold over the state and the economy. President Raisi has populated ministries with guards commanders responsible for atrocious acts of terrorism. We recall, as has been recalled already this morning and correctly, his participation in the 1988 Death Committee and in the extrajudicial murder of some 4,000 political prisoners.
The dire situation could not be clearer, and our corresponding action must therefore just be as clear, just as firm in relation to firm action and to immediate action. Madam Chair, I respectfully ask the Minister and Department to act appropriately. I'm very keen to hear what more action we can take in relation to these matters. I believe that it's not enough for strongly worded statements. The future of this planet, the very future of this world, it is vital for all of us, depends on nuclear arms being kept away from unstable nations, unstable governments like those in Iran who have proven themselves not to be honest and open when it comes to their aims. A nation, an Iran, that wants the wanton destruction of Israel and other Western world. We are, and we need to be vigilant, we need to be prepared, and we need to be ready. And we look to our Minister for a satisfactory response. Thank you.
Why have they enriched to 60%? Why have they turned off 27 surveillance cameras? And why have they developed uranium metal, which has no civilian use, but has lots of use in developing nuclear weapons? All the while, as my honourable friend for Harrow East said, they've developed a significant ballistic missile programme, and they've had the gall to call for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to be declassified as a terrorist organisation. These are not the actions of a state willing to engage in peace talks, or one that seeks to build trust with anyone.
But because of the infamous sunset provisions within the 2015 deal, Iran will be able to legitimately undertake a full nuclear programme. And that means that we could be facing a nuclear Iran as early as 2025. So without doing anything, we're already in a very difficult and dangerous scenario.
I suspect that it's pragmatic at this stage. to call upon the government to extend the sunset clauses, to enact a stricter monitoring regime, to retain terrorist prescriptions, to reinforce existing friendships and relationships with allies in the Middle East, and to press against Iran's destabilising impacts in the region. But I would want to see a way forward where Iran is at the table, as part of a solution. But of course, nothing should be off the table.
We also cannot talk about Iran without discussing wider issues, many of which have already been rightly raised by members today. The JCPOA, while a critical agreement to limit Iran's nuclear capability, does not address Tehran's ballistic missiles programme, which is designed to deliver nuclear weapons, nor its support for terrorist groups and the militias throughout the Middle East, including Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, as mentioned in his contribution by the Honourable Member for Hendon.
Time after time, we have seen Iran taking actions that directly undermine global security, they undermine freedom and democracy, and they challenge the international order. The UK is taking a tough stance. Iran must end its threatening behaviour and must end its destabilising regional activity. But Iran must also return to its JCPOA commitments. The UK has long made it clear our concern about Iran's reckless and destabilising activity in the region. That includes political, financial and military support that it gives to militants and to proscribed terrorist groups, including to Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria, to militias in Iraq and to the Houthis in Yemen. Iran's support for these groups and their activities risks the security and prosperity of the region. They pose a direct threat to the UK and to our interests, as well as to the safety of our allies. Regional security and that of our allies remains one of our top concerns. We're working with allies to constrain Iran's ability to conduct destabilising activities in the region, and will continue to do so whether or not a deal is signed. The Honourable Member for Hendon mentioned the Paris bomb plot and his experiences at that time. The UK government always strongly condemns the targeting of civilians, and we do welcome the fact that those who were responsible for that plot in Paris in 2018 have been held to account. And the work by the Belgian courts in convicting 4 individuals last year, including Asadollah Assadi, who himself received a 20-year sentence. But just to conclude, let me end by saying that it is no one's interest to see a nuclear-armed Iran. The UK is firm in its commitment to the security and prosperity of our allies in the region, and to working with the international community to hold Iran to account for its destabilising activity. We urge and will continue to urge and urge again that Iran ceases its nuclear escalation, that it concludes the deal which is currently on the table to restore the JCPOA whilst this is still possible. And if not, then we will work with our international partners to look at considering all options.